Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I hope you guys are doing well. We come to you on this very rainy night to talk about An American Werewolf in London. We watched it a few days ago. And now we're going to talk about it for this episode. And I'll read you a little bit about the movie and then the plot synopsis, which will not be spoiler free. So, if you haven't seen this, again, go watch it and then come back.
I'll say that if you don't give a chuck about spoilers, then you could just stay here.
Oh, true. Yeah, you don't have to, This movie's been out for a long time, and even if you haven't seen it, you might already know stuff about it just because it's pretty old. But anyway, this is the plot synopsis. So, like I said, today we're talking about An American Werewolf in London. It is a 1981 horror comedy film written and directed by John Landis. Two American backpackers from New York City, David Kessler and Jack Goodman, are trekking across the moors in Yorkshire. As night falls, they stop at a local pub called the Slaughtered Lamb. Jack notices a 5-pointed star on the wall, but when he asks about it, the pub-goers become hostile. The pair decide to leave, and the pub-goers warn them to keep on the road, stay clear of the moors, and beware of the full moon. David and Jack end up wandering off the road onto the moors, and are attacked by a supernaturally large animal. Jack is killed, and David is bitten. The beast is shot and killed by some of the pub-goers who came out searching for the boys. Instead of a dead animal, David sees the corpse of a naked man lying next to him before passing out. David wakes up 3 weeks later in a hospital in London. He is interviewed by Police Inspector Villers, who tells him that he and Jack were attacked by an escaped lunatic, but David insists they were attacked by some sort of rabid dog or wolf. After David has a wolf-themed nightmare, an undead Jack appears to him, explains that the beast that attacked them was a werewolf, and reveals that David is now one. Jack urges David to kill himself before the next full moon, not only because Jack is cursed to linger undead for as long as the bloodline of the werewolf that attacked them survives, but also to prevent David from inflicting the same fate on anyone else. Dr. Hirsch takes a road trip to the Slaughtered Lamb to see if what David has told him is true. When asked about the incident, the pub-goers deny any knowledge of David, Jack, or the attack. However, one distraught pub-goer speaks to Dr. Hirsch outside the pub and says David should not have been taken away and that everyone else will be in danger when he transforms. Upon his release from intensive care, David moves in with Alex Price, a young nurse who grew infatuated with him in the hospital. He stays in Alex's London apartment where they have sex. Jack, in a more advanced stage of decay, appears to David to warn him that he will become a werewolf the next night. Jack again advises David to take his own life to avoid killing innocent people, but David refuses to believe him. When the full moon rises, David painfully transforms from his human form into a werewolf. David, now in werewolf form, prowls the streets and the London Underground, killing and slaughtering 6 people in the process. He wakes up the next morning naked on the floor of a wolf enclosure at the London Zoo, with no recollection of what happened, and manages to make his way back to Alex's apartment. After realizing that he became a werewolf and was responsible for the previous night's murders, David unsuccessfully attempts to get himself arrested in Trafalgar Square. He then warns Alex to stay away from him and confesses that he loves her. David goes to Piccadilly Circus, calling his family from a phone booth to say he loves them. David then suddenly sees Jack in a yet more advanced stage of decay outside of an adult movie theater. Inside, Jack is accompanied by David's victims from the previous night. David transforms again into a werewolf inside the movie theater. He decapitates Inspector Villers and wreaks havoc in the streets, causing the deaths of many drivers and bystanders. He is ultimately trapped and surrounded in an alleyway by the police. Meanwhile, Alex and Dr. Hirsch rush to the place. Alex runs down the alley in an attempt to calm David by telling him that she loves him. Although David appears to recognize her for a brief moment, he lunges forward and is shot by the police. David reverts to human form, and Alex cries and mourns as David lies dead and naked on the ground. So, let's get into it, Danielle. What can you tell us about David, our main character?
Well, I can tell you that for the beginning, not even half, probably the beginning, like, fourth of the movie, he's the one wearing the red jacket.
Huh?
I guess I didn't say his name. David. David is the main character, right?
I am so confused about what kind of joke you're trying to make.
Cause okay, in my notes, I didn't know that their names were because I couldn't catch it fast enough. So for a while in my notes, I just wrote red jacket said this, green jacket said this. So
yes, David does wear a green jacket.
No, red.
Oh, sorry, red jacket.
And
sorry,
Jack wears
I don't want.
jacket.
Yeah, to avoid confusion again. David, red. What's the other one's name?
Jack.
Jack, green. Just keep that in mind when you watch the movie if you haven't seen it.
David is attacked by the werewolf and lives, and so he becomes a werewolf when he later on. And
that's true.
He doesn't think that he's gonna be a werewolf because he thinks it's ridiculous.
Right. But then his friend Jack is like, "No, yeah, you are."
Yeah, and then he's like, "Maybe I'm just crazy."
Yes, as we have already discussed, David is the main character, otherwise known as the protagonist, and he does wear a red jacket indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Very important to his character.
He also wears that NYU shirt so that you know that he's from New York.
True. That's very true. And at one point, he also wears, like, a women's coat. That actually looks really good on him, I will say. But anyway, him and his friend Jack are backpacking. It seems like either through Europe or through England. I don't know. We don't know where they came from or how far they have come,
Yeah, I think that they were in England and they were gonna make their way to Italy is what it sounded like.
Oh, right. Yeah, so they're two backpackers. We don't really get to see them interact too much because Jack does die pretty early on the film. But I mean, he does come back as like a zombie or undead or ghost or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they seem to have like a
different interaction.
Yeah.
Compared to when
in the beginning, yeah. But I mean, like, I gathered just that they're like two guys being dudes. I think they were talking about like having sex with girls and like women's bodies and
there was something that Green Jacket Jack said that rubbed me the wrong way when he's saying something about like, I think he was just trying to be like cocky and be like that he was like the hot shit, but he said something like, "Oh yeah, like we're gonna have sex or something," and she wouldn't have a choice, and I was like,
"Oh yeah, excuse me, sir." So they just they're friends, they're backpacking, they're traveling, they're doing their thing. I will say that I really liked how, like, their characters were introduced because even though there wasn't too much backstory in the beginning, like, you got a general sense as to, like, who these people were, what kind of characters they were, like, their relationship with each other, even though there wasn't a lot of screen time for them to be, like, interacting while they were both, while Jack was alive and before the werewolf attack happened. So I thought that was cool. I also like that they, I guess, I don't know if it's, like, a theme or the idea that they're, like, very clear, like, outsiders in this location,
Mm-hmm.
Like, they literally walk up to the pub and, like, there doesn't seem to be anything else around. And they obviously, like, stick out like sore thumbs as soon as they walk into the pub because it seems like the kind of place where only, like, regulars go. So I like kind of like that little introduction of their characters. I thought it was pretty clever. I appreciated the fact that it wasn't too over-explaining. It was just kind of like throwing you into their story and kind of like taking you from there as opposed to like, any sort of backstory that might have not been necessary,
You made me think of something that I did not think about before with the opening scene. I kind of like focused more on them like getting to the pub, but I kind of just realized that the opening, I'm pretty sure they're riding in the back of the car with like sheep or lambs.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the pub is a slaughtered lamb. They were in the back like as if they are lambs and they get slaughtered.
Good catch. I totally didn't catch that.
I didn't until I just thought about it right now. So
yeah. They go into the slaughtered lamb, the pub, where like they didn't have anything that they wanted, but it was too cold to be out.
Motherfucker goes into a pub and asks for chocolate milk or hot Coke.
Chocolate.
Yeah, hot chocolate.
I think, to be fair, I think that was like his like fourth ask. He was like, "Do you have anything that's warm?"
Ridiculous to ask
Yeah,
for.
that is crazy. I'm surprised like they couldn't have had like a hot toddy is like, you know, a hot alcoholic beverage, you know, at a pub. I don't know. I don't know if pubs are like exclusively beer. I don't know anything about pubs, but like, yeah, hot chocolate was a stretch. They didn't have food. They didn't have coffee. So anyway, yeah. So that's their first stop, and that's kind of like where the suspicious stuff starts to happen. I'm curious to know what you have for the antagonist because,
well,
I don't really. I just thought that like David was the antagonist himself because he's the one who's, you know, a werewolf and is gonna potentially hurt himself and hurt other people. But what did you think?
I agree with that. I put David in werewolf mode.
Werewolf mode activate.
I also thought that in some ways, like before he turns into a werewolf, you can kind of see Jack as an antagonist because he's like coming up and like distressing David and like confusing him and making him question his sanity. It's just in general, after he's a corpse, I guess he's or a zombie ghost thing. He
is also like trying to motivate David to kill himself, which is like the demise of the main character.
Yeah. So I think he could be
Percy. Yeah, I could see that. It's interesting. An interesting take. I thought the conflict was also like pretty straight up. You know, conflict is he's gonna become a werewolf, or he is a werewolf, and he's gonna hurt other people or hurt himself. So I thought that was pretty straight up, you know. Also, like, I guess somewhat of a subplot / like sub-conflict would be the fact that he maybe is trying to pursue a relationship with the nurse. And obviously that's jeopardized by the fact that he is a werewolf. But I mean, conflict is pretty straight up.
Yeah, I also put the conflict is that David is a werewolf, but he doesn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, that. There's not much more to it, you know?
For the subplot, I was thinking that it could be Jack trying to be, like, set free and all the other people that have been killed by David. Well, I guess David didn't kill Jack, but all the people who have been killed by a werewolf are, like, stuck in this in-between.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to get it over with.
Right.
So they can just move on.
Yeah, and I think that especially works as a subplot because they, like, have a motivation as to why they're encouraging David to, like, end it all, basically. So, yeah, that's an interesting point. So, I wanted to talk about some symbolism / interesting tidbits about this movie. Obviously, this is a classic. I don't think we've mentioned that yet, but this is a movie that is very well known in the genre, and as far as like discussing it, I feel like there aren't a whole lot of fresh takes just because it is like so old and, you know, everyone's talked about it already, and it's already like made a name for itself. It's hard to think of it like super critically nowadays because there's so much more media that came after it that is obviously so much better because it was made in a different time. But when I was doing research about the movie itself, I found something that was really interesting about one of the scenes in the movie, and I'm sure you'll remember it because it was like one of the weirdest for me, at least. Which one do you think I'm going to talk about?
The weird shooting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wrote under my section that's just questions.
Questions, why? So, yes, basically there's a scene where, I believe it's a nightmare, right? Where David is with his family and they're all like watching TV and he's kind of just...
Muppets.
Yeah, they're watching the Muppets. He's doing his homework. Mom's in the kitchen. Dad's in the living room. And he goes, somebody knocks on the door and the dad answers it. And there's a bunch of these, like soldier-looking dudes that like with gas masks.
No,
right? What are they?
They're like animal masks.
Oh yeah, they're like demon-y looking. They got like sharp teeth and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they like shoot everyone up, and one of them holds up a knife to David's like neck and basically makes him watch all of his family dying.
And then the house is on fire too.
Yeah. So that there was a really interesting article on sci-fi.com or sci-fi-wire.com, and I will link it down below. It's basically about that moment. It's like, I think the headline of the article is like, what the fuck moments. And they called it the Zombie Nazi Massacre in an American Werewolf in London. So I read through it, and like something that like basically what it all boiled down to was these few paragraphs that I'll read right now. Really quick before I get into what the article said, they do allude to David being Jewish at some points in the movie.
Oh, yeah. The thing with the pervy nurse.
Yes. So one of the nurses basically says that David is circumcised, which is like, something that Jewish people do as a practice, like a religious practice, I should say. And then also I think Kessler's like a Jewish last name. So that's like one of the things that is like known. And also in the article they point out that in that specific scene you can see that they have like a menorah on the table. So like it's pretty clear like they're a Jewish family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically what the article, like the point of the article was to say that the attack by the mutant Nazis, as over the top and bloody as it was, displays the fears and anxieties faced by modern-day Jews in a post-Holocaust world. Remember, An American Werewolf in London took place less than 4 decades after Hitler's reign came to an end, placing an American Jew in a landscape where ghosts of the past still linger fresh in the present day, digs up the unspoken yet understood fear that rooted from an era where these atrocities were the law of the land. David's fever dream, this fiery invasion of a bunch of killer Nazi thugs in mutant form, is simply an amped-up, hyper-stylized representation of the monsters who slaughtered his ancestors, and the all-encompassing symbol of the monster, as well as the fear and the shame that can find itself hiding inside us all. So I thought that was really interesting because, like, had I not, found out about this context, like, that scene was, like, really...
It was
really
like a different
random
movie. It was a whole different... I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
They don't even look like werewolves. What's going on?
Yeah. It was really strange. I mean, like, to be fair, like, all of the other, like, little nightmare sequences are also pretty strange. But that one stood out. The other ones were at least, like,
in the same realm.
Werewolf-related, you know? There was, like, a werewolf theme that was very obvious because he was thinking about whether or not he was going to turn into a werewolf. But that one was one that was, like, super strange, and I mean, I thought it was creepy as hell, but I just couldn't figure out, like, why it was there. Mm-hmm. So that was, like, one of the things that I found when I was looking up stuff about the movie. It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that scene a little bit more then.
Mm-hmm. It seems more purposeful now.
Yeah.
That I know, given that context,
Mm-hmm.
So, keeping on the theme of my little research time of this movie, I did find a few articles that had fun facts about the movie itself. And the 2 articles where I got most of this information from are linked in the description of the podcast. So, as we mentioned before, this movie is directed by John Landis. And his previous movies were Animal House and Blues Brothers, so they're like comedy movies. I've not seen either of them. I don't know if you have.
I've seen a lot of like parody things of Blues Brothers,
Yeah.
but I don't think I've seen it actually.
Right, neither have I.
I was thinking that episode of Drake and Josh where they're pretending to be the Blues Brothers.
Yeah. We're so cultured. That's how we know the Blues Brothers. But anyway, the Blues Brothers is a really huge movie, I think shortly before this movie was filmed. And so the director actually used his clout for the movie that he, like, for Blues Brothers, in order to be able to film in Piccadilly Circus. And because
That's a real place?
Yeah. It's a real place. Yeah, in London.
That sounds like a silly. Not to be mean, but
wow, all of our British audience gone, done for.
They're gonna come for me.
And so so he actually staged a screening for the cops, like specifically, because they really liked the movie, and he was like, "Hey, you can watch the movie for free," and they let him film there, and they actually let him stop traffic, which was a big deal because I guess that's a very highly trafficked area. But yeah, that was like one of the things that I found.
Nice.
So apparently, upon researching, I found out that the music video for Thriller, like Michael Jackson's Thriller, was actually inspired by this movie. Like, he watched An American Werewolf in London, and he, like, really liked it, that he reached out to John Landis and was like, "Hey, will you direct my music video?" So actually, John Landis directed Thriller. And the guy who did the special effects makeup, his name is Rick Baker, he did the makeup for the music video. So I thought that was really cool.
That
like
is
a pretty big impact, you know?
Yeah, I feel like nobody even knows that. Like, that's not even like a thing that like.
Yeah, I mean, people might know it, but it's not super well known. I don't think. Also, the movie came out in '81, and the music video came out in '83. So I feel like that's really close time for something to have been inspired by something else that just came out. You know, It's really cool. So something else that I found was that. The guy who plays David, his name is David Naughton, had revealed in an interview that, like, one of the most difficult scenes to film, one might think that it's the one with the transformation, because I would imagine that there's, like, a ton of makeup, involved. But he actually said that the hardest scene to film was the one where he is having the nightmare, and his hospital bed is, like, in the middle of the forest. And then he does that, like, creepy face with, like, the yellow eyes.
Yeah.
He said because the contacts were, like, glass contacts, and they were, like, really hurting his eyes. So he said that was, like, the hardest scene to film. Isn't that crazy?
Jesus.
But yeah, imagine having, like, fucking little shards of glass on your eyeballs. I mean, I'm sure they weren't, like pointy, but...
Yeah, but it is a little thin piece of glass over your eye. Ugh,
Yeah,
I don't want to. Like, I can't even process putting in a regular contact into my eye.
That's, like, not glass.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, that's pretty gnarly. Yeah, I thought that was pretty crazy. Something else that's also special about this movie is that in 1981, when the movie was made, during the Oscar season, they actually won for best makeup, and that was the first time that category was ever introduced. So they created that category at the Oscars for this movie specifically. Yeah. So Rick Baker, who did the makeup, won the very first Oscar for makeup.
That's awesome.
Best makeup. Yeah, that's really cool. Which is, like, totally deserved.
Yeah, that was, like, one of, like, the things that I noticed immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was how good it looked.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like in some ways, like, the practical makeup looks, like, way better than CGI stuff.
Oh, yeah. And when it's done right, like, it looks so much better. And, like, much more realistic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. That's all my fun facts. That it was cool. Lots of neat stuff about this movie because it's been around for a while.
So I was thinking that in the opening, when they're walking and it's nighttime and they're walking up to the to the little town, and there's like this like music playing that it really reminded me of Resident Evil 4. Of like walking into like some weird little town, and like the music kind of reminded me of the you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but people, you might know what I'm talking about. The music kind of reminded me of the typewriter save music, just because it was like sort of classical sounding and like instrumental and like eerie, but like it was giving me those vibes, and I was like, write that down. So, and then I have 2 questions that I wanted to ask you and see what your opinion on it was.
Okay.
Do you think that there was some sort of like deeper meaning to that little kid character, Benjamin, that just kept saying no all the time? Like, I feel like they like kept showing him so much and like making it like an emphasis or a point or something that I was like, are they trying to tell me something with this that I don't understand?
Huh.
I don't know.
I don't know. But I also kind of don't think so. Okay. I feel like he was maybe supposed to be like comic relief at best. You know, I don't really know. And maybe there is, but yeah,
it's going over our head.
Yeah, maybe it's going over our head. If you guys know, or if you think that there's any meaning to the little kid saying no, put it in the comments or send us an email or something. But yeah, good point, because they did show him quite a lot, and I almost kept on expecting him to be like involved in some other aspect of the story, but he, from what I could tell, he wasn't. So I don't know.
The second question that I had is, do you think that there was some sort of reason that the climax of the story happened basically in the adult movie theater? Like, I feel like that was a really random choice, and like, I don't know, I feel like it was kind of specific, and like even David like brings attention to it, like, why did you bring me in here? And like, oh, of course you would bring me in here, and like, I don't know, it just seemed kind of...
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of, well, I can think of a few things. From the beginning of the movie, we can gather a little bit that like Jack was a little bit of a perv. So, like, maybe that's some sort of connection. Another thing would be maybe just the sheer fact that, like, at that time, and still, to a certain extent, like, sex sells. So, like, they thought, you know, let's make the climax of this movie in, like, an adult movie theater because it'll be, like, even more scandalous. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be scary and it'll also be, you know, pretty scandalous. So, I don't know. Another thing I just thought of is also the fact that maybe they wanted to incorporate the fact that this was filmed like in London and not in the U.S. because they would never have something like that in the U.S. I'm not saying that they didn't have them, but like in a movie context, I feel like that's not as common, or it's not as commonly shown in such a casual way. Like usually if they show any sort of like adult movie theater or anything like that, it's for a very specific reason in an American movie or in a movie set in the US where you're showing a character who's like secretly going or has some sort of storyline that has to do with them watching porn or something like that. Maybe they wanted to like be like, oh look, we're in London and everybody is so much more open about like sex and sexuality that it's like not as big of a deal. I also did read, I forgot to say, but I read that the porn film that's in playing in the adult movie theater, like John Landis like actually shot himself also. Like not himself, but like actually he probably did because he's a director. But yeah, it was also part of the production of the movie. So they shot a porn to put into the movie in the part where there's an adult movie theater, so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
In the beginning and in a few different parts of this movie, I feel like the person who wrote the story or the director or somebody must have been a big fan of this other movie from 1941 called The Wolfman. Because they make references to it a lot, and like a specific one is the thing about the connection between werewolves and pentagrams or pentangles. Because I looked it up, and that is specifically only
in that movie.
Only in that movie. Like, there's no other instances of it really mentioned. I mean, I guess in this movie that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
But it's in reference to the other one. So.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that was purposeful.
Yeah.
Especially if they mentioned the movie by name, like.
I don't know if they mentioned the movie by name, but they mentioned the actor,
the
main actor of the movie. They're like, oh, that movie was
so and so.
So and so. I think
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to know that was like one of the source materials or inspirations for this movie.
Mm-hmm. So Paola, what did you like about this movie?
So, what did I like about this movie? I thought, all in all, this movie was really entertaining, and I also really liked the main character, like the actor, David Naughton. I feel like he was really, like, he was good. He was just, like, very engaging, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, some of the acting can get pretty cheesy, but I feel like it's normal for the time, you know? And it was never so cheesy that it, like, bothered me. Like, I actually kind of enjoyed it. I feel like, especially in older horror movies, like, there's a level of cheese that I enjoy, you know? That is, like, obvious. It's just something that jumps out to you as, like, being almost like being part of the genre, like for that time specifically, for like older movies of like the 80s and before and all that.
I think we already touched on this kind of, but I just wanted to add, like, one of my favorite things of the movie was the practical makeup and effects and stuff that they did for like the werewolf attack, the like transformation, and the slowly increasing of the corpses rotting. Those are all really cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. I put down in my notes that was Chef's Kiss. It was like,
yes,
that was great. It was really, really cool.
It was. I was wondering how did they do the transformation though? Like how do they do that to make it look smooth? Like the things actually like popping out of the face. Like how do you do that?
I would think, if I had to guess, it would probably be like a combination of like, obviously the special effects makeup, like the practical makeup, with like almost like a stop motion type of situation. I mean, I'm sure, I'm like, you know, it was done in editing, but not like, it doesn't. So cute. Just kick the cat. It obviously isn't like CGI or anything like that. But it was like, it looks very obviously like it was done in editing, you know? And if I had to guess, it would have to be like something stop motion, like where they are able to match like frame by frame and just add a little bit more of that snout or whatever.
That's really cool. That takes a lot of patience. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So like I said, I also thought that the special effects makeup and the practical effects were really cool. All the things you said, and also like the head of the wolf, like when he's in werewolf form, like you can tell it's like a practical like dummy or something, but it looks really cool. Like it looks pretty creepy.
Yeah.
And also going along with that, some of the cinematography too I thought was really clever. Specifically going back to the scene, like the transformation scene, it was shot in a way that was really dynamic and like really featured like the special effects makeup, and then also like something that I've learned in the little bit of like filmmaking production classes that I've taken is like how compelling a certain scene can be made by the use of cuts that feature like both like close-ups and also like wide shots. Like the juxtaposition of those things just like makes for a more compelling, you know, piece of storytelling or scene. And so I really liked in the movie, in that scene particularly, when obviously they show you him transforming, but they also show you like specific like close-ups of like his hand or like his fur like growing and on like a macro level almost. I thought that really added to the scene and really like featured the special effects makeup in a way that was really neat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also thought that there was some really good cinematography with when he's doing his dreaming thing, and it shows the camera like going through the forest.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is very Evil Dead-esque. And I looked it up, and they came out in the same year, only like 2 months apart.
Wow, really?
So they both just happened to do the same type of thing with the camera. I mean, I'm guessing it must have already been being done beforehand.
Yeah.
But like whenever I would see that kind of a camera motion, I would always think of Evil Dead. But I guess
I mean,
it's both of them. I don't know.
I feel like the two movies have like similar vibes, especially in the sense that they're both like horror and comedy type of situations.
Yeah.
Another scene that's shot really well, I thought, was the one where he's chasing like the businessman guy.
That was the next thing.
In the metro or the tube or whatever they call it. I thought that was shot like really cleverly. Like everything from like the chase all the way to the end where we get like the kind of like close up like pan to the guy's face when he's about to die. I was like, oh, that was really cool.
Yeah, I agree definitely. It made the way they filmed it made it feel more like high stakes and like you felt more like anxious, like you were the one running or something.
Yeah, it was a good bit of action. I thought it was good.
I really liked the music. I thought that the tracks that they picked out, that it was neat that they all had to do with the moon. And particularly, I really liked the, I'm not sure if it was like, I think I read that it was doo-wop. I wrote in my notes originally that it was scat, but I think it was doo-wop, I guess, of the song Blue Moon. Because it was like, I was getting down to that when the credits were playing. I was like, whoa, this is really good.
That's funny.
Like super zany, I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wrote down the same thing. I also thought that was a really neat way to like tailor the score of the movie by using songs that were like already written. And it was cool. Like it stood out. Obviously, it wasn't slick. Like it was pretty on the nose, but it was also pretty cool.
I think it was also supposed to like be kind of like foreshadowing for like transition scenes. Especially I think the one by Creedence Clearwater. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's like
Bad Moon Rising.
Yeah.
True.
And then also the one saying that it was gonna, just the ones that said Blue Moon. Because I guess I looked it up and I didn't know what a blue moon was, but apparently there's two meanings, but the more important one that's relevant to this movie is that a blue moon means that there was 2 full moons in one cycle, which I did not think was possible, and I'm still kind of baffled because everything I've been taught is wrong. But also, I guess it's rare.
Yeah.
For that saying once in a blue moon.
Right.
But
I'd heard of a blue moon, but I also didn't know what it meant.
I thought it was literally because there's 2 meanings, right? So one of the meanings is literally that the moon just looks blue because of like dust and stuff in the atmosphere, and so I thought that was just it, like when there's a red moon, or a blood moon or whatever. So learned something new. What makes you think?
So the last thing that I have for something that I liked was how well I thought this movie like struck a balance between horror and comedy. I feel like at any given moment, like there were like jokes cracked here and there, but there was also times where like it wasn't funny. Like it was never. I never felt like scared in the way that I feel scared of other movies, but it was definitely like a good distinction between like the moments that were literally just supposed to be scary and the moments that were supposed to be a little bit more lighthearted. I thought it was a good balance in the sense that it like gave you some relief from the darker moments, you know, especially like seeing obviously like the movie starts out pretty fast with a death. And a death of like somebody who you think is going to be a main character. So it starts out pretty dark, but there's like still the balance, even with like after Jack is dead. like he's still like cracking jokes and stuff. I thought that was really a really interesting choice because obviously often in movies the undead or zombies are portrayed as like, you know, they don't talk, they're like, you know, like stuff like that. So like for Jack to be like almost in a sense like comedic relief, but at the same time to be like decaying even more every single time that you saw him
and telling him to go kill himself.
Yeah, and telling him to go kill himself. Like it was just a really interesting balance of that like horror and comedy. Because I feel like that's hard to achieve. I think nowadays a good example of that is like Get Out, because I feel like that also strikes a pretty good balance of horror and comedy. But for the time, you know, I thought it was great. Like it was really, it made it more interesting, and it made it like not so heavy in areas where like things like shit gets really real for David.
Yeah. The last thing that I had in my category of like is right at the end, right after David turns into a werewolf for the second time, and like everything goes to hell in a handbasket outside of the theater.
Yeah.
And like the policeman's head goes flying, and the cars crash, and it's just chaos. And I'm like, I love this. I love all this chaos. It's really good.
That was good.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like him turning into a werewolf inside the thing, and then like coming out and just like fucking, you know, like that. Fucking chopping heads off or biting them off or whatever. But yeah, I like that scene also. I thought it was fun. It was like a fun way to end the movie.
I like how we say fun and it's like someone's head gets decapitated and people are dying in car crashes. And we're like, that's fun.
It was fun. Well, no, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, when it's not real.
Well, yeah, it's very obviously not real. Something we didn't mention, or maybe you have it in your I don't have it, but I just thought of it right now. It's like the blood. The blood that they use.
Oh, yeah, I guess. It was kind of bright.
It was very bright. It was like really, really red. Like super red. But maybe, you know, it was intentional. Who knows?
Yeah.
So what did you not like about this movie? She's about to go in. She's about to roast them. Watch out, John Landis.
Alright, so, one of the things that, like, stuck out to me a lot was that the way in which Jack, like, spoon feeds information to David and, by extension, the audience. I thought it was kind of, like, lazy. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there might not have been any other way to really tell.
Like, you mean the fact that he was the one telling him that he was a werewolf?
Yeah, and that, like, oh, you're gonna, like, turn into a werewolf and you have to die because, you know, you're the last of the werewolf, and, like, I don't know, just explain,
all
like,
of that
the
information,
backstory thing.
Okay, yeah.
Like, we're all stuck in purgatory, or not purgatory, we're all stuck in the in-between. Like, I don't know. I mean, there wouldn't have been a better way to explain it, I guess, but I feel like it was just, like, the way it was presented was kind of, like, I was like, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I could totally, if this movie was made in a different way, in a different style, I could totally see it being the case that, like, David starts, like, feeling weird, and then he's like, what's happening to me? And then he goes and, like, does research about it and finds out from, like, a book or, like...
Yeah, that's, like, the only other way you find out, basically, unless someone tells you.
A book or, like, a person who's, like, well-versed in werewolves. You know, like...
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I could see that. But I think at the same time, it was, like... the fact that Jack was already dead made it easier to explain why he would know all those things. If it was just Billy Bob, let's say, that like was still alive and David's friend, and he was telling him all these things, and I feel like I would have questioned it more.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was just Jack, I was like, oh, well, obviously he knows because he's, like, dead and he knows everything or whatever. So apparently when we die, we find everything out. When we're stuck in between.
When we die from a werewolf.
Yeah, when you die from a werewolf attack. So I don't have a whole lot that I didn't like, to be honest. The one thing that stood out to me the most that kind of bothered me was the fact that the love story, like faux love story between David and Alex or Nurse Price, I think. It was just kind of like half-baked. Like, I feel like there could have been so much more done with that, and I feel like maybe they just didn't think it was that important, or maybe they just, I don't know what the motivation was, but there's a moment at the end when David's like in a werewolf form and he's about to die, or he's attacking everyone, that chaos moment we were talking about, and like they have this like, oh yeah, I love you, whatever, and like it's fine, but at the same time like it didn't have any meaning, it didn't have any sort of emotional weight to it, because it was like completely baseless, basically.
Yeah,
and it was almost like comical, and I don't know if it was meant to be comical. That's the thing. I feel like they were relying on that like moment to be like a touching thing between David and Alex, but I just never really bought that. To me, it seemed like it started out as like they met because he was a patient and they were obviously attracted to each other, and they kissed, and then they like went and hooked up, and then all of a sudden you're trying to sell me the fact that they love each other. Like,
yeah.
What? Like, huh?
Also, there's like, I think 2 different times that she literally says like, oh, I don't know if you're cute or I just feel sorry for you, is basically what it boils down to. So I don't think that's love. Some weird, what's that thing when you take care of a patient and then you like fall for them because you like took care of them and you feel sorry for them? There's some term for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, I'm not buying it either. I'm gonna go off of that point and flesh it out more by saying I thought that some of the emotions in the movie didn't land right. I don't know if that's the right word to use, emotions, but like the tone would shift so much. I don't even know, like in like such a tiny space that I felt like I was getting like whiplashed from it. Like there's 2 scenes specifically that involve David and Alex, in which she's like trying to comfort him while he's freaking out. So he'll be freaking out, saying something like, "Oh, like I'm crazy, I don't know," and then all of a sudden he just like turns and like kisses her, and it's like, you are this doesn't match. What are you doing? And then he goes right back to, "Oh my god, I'm a werewolf" or something. And it's like, what happened in between there? Do you think, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't come across right to me. Or I was trying to think if there was any other examples exactly, but those 2 are the ones that stuck out to me, and I wrote them in my notes because I even wrote like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. I honestly think that a lot of like their relationship has more to do with the fact that they needed to have like a woman character in the movie for it to be like, it's not just about him being a werewolf, it's like him having some sort of relationship, some sort of love interest, because she's not really, other than the fact that she was his nurse, she's not really there to like serve a whole lot of purpose other than gratuitous sex scenes, which were like
way too long,
first of all. And also, like, why didn't you use some of that time to develop their relationship in a way that made it look more genuine, you know? She was kind of a little bit useless, I feel like. And not in a way that is like, not in a way that has anything to do with like her as a character, but more so the fact that she was a poorly written character. And she was like very obviously inserted to have some like female eye candy or something like that.
Mm.
It's the only way that I could think about it, because, like, there was so much more that could have been done with her. I feel like there was definitely a time where every single movie, regardless of genre, regardless of, like, what the narrative of the story was, or what the theme or like the actual point of the story was, like, there had to be some sort of love storyline for people to be interested, or for studios to be interested. One of the two, I don't know. Or maybe both.
They could have totally done more with her in the end. And, like, I didn't like the ending, how it ended so abruptly. Like, it was literally, like, he just got shot, she cried for, like, 3 seconds, and then it cut to black.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what the fuck? And so I think that they could have done more with her in that ending, because throughout the movie, David kept saying, oh, yeah, isn't it, like, only someone who loves the werewolf can kill them? He says that so many times, and I was like, oh, the end, yeah. So Alex is going to say she loves him or something, and she's going to have to kill him because he's going to try and hurt her.
That would have given her character more purpose.
Yes.
Mm.
I was like, what the fuck? She was there, and she was right in front of him, and she told him I love him, so she did, like half of the two things that I thought was going to happen. But then the cops killed him, and I was like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah, I think that maybe, honestly, I'm very curious to know whether or not there's some sort of alternate ending. Because it really does seem like that's not the way that it was supposed to end.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there were more factors to why they chose to end it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good point. I feel like, going back to, it really goes back to the fact that, like, Alex's character is, a poorly written, like, female character.
Mm-hmm.
And her, or what's it called, like, the ending of the movie kind of goes along with that.
I think you mentioned this already, that the dialogue in some parts was kind of off, kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm specifically looking at you, Mr. Embassy guy, who, what did he say? He said, I appreciate how upset you are. What kind of bullshit? And he just kept repeating that over and over again. I appreciate how upset you are, Mr. Kessler.
That's when he wakes up and he's freaking out. He's in the hospital, right? I was confused. I think I wrote in my notes at some point, like, why is that guy so upset at the fact that he's, like, having a natural reaction to waking up in the hospital after 3 weeks?
And finding out his friend had died.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was being a total ass, and then you never see him again. It's like, oh, we've informed your family. They never show up. It's been 3 weeks that he's been there. His family never shows up. What did the NBC guy do? Yeah. Why was he even there? He didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like him. He's an asshole.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a remake of this movie, but I feel like there are so many things that could have gone better,
Yeah, get rid of the NBC guy and give that, like, small bit of time to Alex, like,
doing more things.
Yeah. Something about that scene with the little kid and the balloons rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh,
I just felt really weird about it. I was like, especially I don't know if the actor probably was not naked at that point, but I know he was naked for other parts of the movie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Not fake naked, real naked.
Real naked. And so I think in that part they don't show below his, like, stomach. Mm-hmm. So probably he was wearing underwear or something, but I don't know. Even then, like, it's just. It was weird. I didn't like it.
I could see why at the time people didn't think much about it.
Thought it was funny.
Yeah, you could tell it was meant to be funny.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't, like, I didn't get any pervy vibes from it, but I can see why you think that.
Yeah.
Just, the context of, like, a kid, a guy who's naked, together in the same scene.
And the guy
pretty fucking
in
weird.
A bush saying, hey kid, come here.
Yeah, hey kid, come here.
I'm wondering why that old lady reacted the way she did. She's the first person he ran into when he's naked in the park. She, like, turned to him and saw that he's naked, and he was just like, and then he just, like, turned around and crawled away, and she was just like,
right.
She didn't even make a face, actually. She just, like, looked at him like...
Maybe it's because in Europe or in England,
people run around naked all the time?
They don't run around naked, but they don't care as much about nudity.
I guess so.
At least that's the word on the street.
So So,
what do you
what'd
rate this movie? You say it first.
I gave this movie a 6.4 out of 10 flying police heads.
Wow.
I really liked the graphics and the camera work and the music, but I thought that the plot and dialogue needed more attention. Especially at some points, I feel like some things were just sort of like shoehorned in or like kind of like filler. And that's why, like, the sex scene stretched on so long. That's why there's a montage before the transformation scene of David just being bored. There's a point where he, like, gets locked out of the door and has to, like, climb up into a window. Like, I don't know what was the point of that either. I feel like they're just trying to, like, fill up time, kind of, because they didn't have things going on with, like, character development for David or anything.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But it was entertaining. It was entertaining. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It was entertaining, though.
So I gave it, you're going to be surprised because my rating is much different than yours. I gave it 8 out of 10 Bad Moons Rising. I will explain myself. I'm not holding, I feel like this is usually the way that I think about when it comes to classics. I don't hold it to the same expectations or standards as I would a current movie. And so usually when it comes to rating classics, I rate it on like my overall experience, like movie watching experience, not so much the details, because we have foresight. Yeah, I guess we have the foresight of having lived like many years after that movie came out and having seen, does that make sense?
Yeah, seen other movies.
Yeah, having seen other movies that are like obviously tremendously better because they're made in the future. So yeah, so I thought it was like pretty enjoyable. Like I said, there was something about like movies from the 80s and horror movies from the 80s that make me, like, for the most part, I find really enjoyable, in that I can see the seeds of inspiration for other movies that I really enjoy that are more contemporary. I can see, like, you know, the beginnings of a genre that obviously has evolved a lot and has, you know, transformed into something else now. And obviously, like, practical effects are not really a thing anymore. They are, I guess, still used sometimes, but obviously CGI is like the number one thing now. But whenever I see an old horror movie like that, that's really just what I enjoy. You know, I feel like there's hardly ever going to be the case where like I watch an old horror movie that I don't enjoy, because I feel like there's something in all of them that has inspired movies that I love now, like horror movies that I love now, and horror movies that I'm able to think about more critically, because they basically, like, you know, like walked so that so and so movie could run, you know. But yeah, so I thought it was like overall a really enjoyable experience. That's it for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. Let us know what you thought about this episode and about the movie in the comments below. Make sure to send us an email if you have any questions or any comments or any movie recommendations. Our email is danielleandpaola@gmail.com.
And also make sure to go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram. Our handle is Hysterrified Podcast. And then on Twitter, our handle is Hysterrified Pod. You can go and talk with us on there. Leave your thoughts there if you prefer. See what we're up to. Get funny little videos on Instagram of Paola editing it. And then also, if you're using Apple Podcast app, it would be really nice if you'd give us a review and a rating. We really appreciate it. And also, it'd be cool if you tell people about our podcast.
Yeah.
You can mention it, and you can share links.
Yes.
If you'd like.
Share this video, share our podcast to all of your friends who also like horror movies. Yeah, and we hope you guys liked it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.